Welcome into another edition of the Going Deep podcast, a special Wednesday edition for us, getting on here, doing our thing here for a Wednesday live show. We appreciate everybody tuning in here to this special edition. Mike, first and foremost, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good overall. Weather kind of stunk, but
Yep.
overall, it's tough to really be in a great mood after everything that took place in Buffalo over the weekend. Obviously, community's still trying to heal, but it's hard to say that you're in good spirits when something like that takes place. And obviously, just a tough time for this entire area right now.
Yeah, absolutely is. It was good to see all the Bills players come out, show their support. Bills, Sabres, and Bandits. Really doing what they can, putting some actions first, being out there at the community. So that was great to see, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's the response that's needed in a time like this. The entire Bills team to come out. I guess I didn't know what to expect. You don't know what the right response is, but it feels fitting that the organizations came out to support the community, and it seems like the response overall from many different groups and people across Buffalo has been top notch, which is what you hope for after just a senseless, just horrific, unnecessary thing that took place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really challenging to kind of put any type of words toward that, but obviously, here Cover One and the Going Deep podcast, we'll do whatever we can to bring what's right back to the community, Mike. And it was great to see the Bills do that as well. So I guess the team's back in here, back in good spirits. It looked like everybody came together and did what they can to the community. And it looked like you saw Stephon Diggs cooking. You saw Gabriel Davis out there. You saw some of the core players, Josh Allen giving a speech. And then you also saw the Micah Hyde charity game too, on Sunday as well. So that was looked like a pack house in there. And did you end up making it?
Yeah, I ended up going to the charity softball game on Sunday, and it really speaks to what this team really means to the Buffalo community. They're more than just a football team. In a lot of different cities across the country, sports are important. People care about their teams. But in Buffalo, the Bills, the Sabres, even the Bandits to a certain degree, it's a lifestyle. And players like Josh Allen in another city, yeah, people would love him, but he represents so much more in our community. And for them to come together really means a lot. And the event on Sunday, the charity softball game, that was going to be a good sized event with a good cause either way. But it just meant so much more after what took place on Saturday. And then to obviously the players had a moment of silence. They were raising money for the families of the victims. And it's also part of the healing process to have, I guess, I don't have good words with this. It's hard to really put things into words, but to come together as a community. And that Sunday there was over 10,000 people at the ballpark for a good cause, and to have a little bit of something to cheer for. It's part of it, everybody heals differently, and it's part of the process. Like I said, I really don't have the proper words to articulate it. I'm obviously I live in Buffalo, you live in Rochester, we both live in Western New York, but obviously we're not as closely connected to that community that was hit. And I don't want to put words that just don't do justice to how that neighborhood and everyone has been impacted.
Yeah, and I just think all that we can do is show our support and help take action with that and do what we can do to help heal the community from our end and do more than just words is I think the biggest thing that we can do to show support. And being that, we're a Bills show and, this is a huge part of the community here in Buffalo, I think that ultimately there's some, spring activities was this show is deemed to be the spring recap show, Mike. And I think that there's plenty of spring activities to get into and talk about a little bit. And I think that the best thing that we can do is continue to show support to football team who is also doing what they can to show support to the community. So I think that, by continuing to bring good actions and show like what this team is all about, I think that that's like a core function here, to kind of highlight the good that's coming out of the Bills and what they're able to do here. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So as you get into the spring, Mike, and are you looking for something certain to come from the spring games, from the spring practices? Do you look for, I know you're not like into the UDFAs and the DTs, and I know we talked about that at post draft. What do you look for when you're recapping or you're reviewing spring training and spring, kind of the spring OTAs?
Honestly, I just try to get through them, and I'm hoping. I obviously watch the press conferences, hear the coaches speak, and I'm just hoping that the chemistry is there, that the team building, obviously with Ken Dorsey now taking over as offensive coordinator, how does it sound like things are coming together with a different person leading the way? But with this team so complete and returning so many players, I don't really worry as much about how are players looking, how are they fitting in well. For the most part, we know this is a solid roster. They're going to come together. It's more so just counting down those days till you get to training camp to where you can actually see what's happening. Because I remember past years where we would see reports from the media, and then they would be like, "Oh, so and so looks weak right now," or "So and so looks strong." It's spring. It's a collection of a bunch of different players. You got the UDFAs, you got the rookies, you got the new free agents. It's not going to be a pretty sight. And right now, it's just coming together, and hopefully, you get some of the new guys like Kaiir, Elam, Terrell Bernard, Khalil Shakir, and so forth. James Cook. And hopefully, they get some opportunities to shine a little bit early and build some confidence heading into the summer. That's really all I care about.
You care about them getting there healthy, huh? So what did you think of James Bradberry going for $10 million to the Eagles? Did you think the Bills would be ever interested in that type of deal? I saw that kind of floating around and was wondering like what kind of your opinion of that would have been. Like, I know there was some talks about, could we bring him in from the Giants? That didn't come to fruition. He got a little bit more money than we thought. Is cornerback 2 still a need as you enter spring?
I don't really feel like it's a tremendous need at this current moment. I once the Bills drafted Kaiir Elam, I didn't think that Bradberry or any other high-profile corner would really be in the cards. I honestly, I didn't really think that Bradberry was going to be in the cards even before Elam. I still think a corner like a Joe Hayden or someone comparable to that, where you think you might be able to get them in on the cheap, could still be a possibility. Where a CB2/3, where you don't lock them in, but some good depth for the team could be a possibility. But yeah, it was a good move for Philadelphia. I think the Eagles are showing that they might have a chance to actually win the NFC East this year. Yeah. Especially with some of the talent that they brought in this offseason, bringing in A.J. Brown. Now you have James Bradberry. The Eagles could be pretty solid. You got Devontae Smith in the second year. Jalen Hurts has some upside ability. So it's a move where I'm not really upset about it. I know Bills fans wanted Bradberry all offseason, but you can't have everyone. And even though the contract is I'd say pretty friendly for Philly, it's not something that I really expected the Bills to be in on. And like I said, not disappointed.
Yeah, same here. I just didn't. I thought the ship had sailed. After they had spent some money, and I just didn't think they could afford the 10. I honestly thought he got a lot more than I even thought after getting cut. He's probably double dipping in some way, shape, form, or another in his contract. So good for Bradberry. He was probably one of the best players to hit the market post free agency. So, I think that's a good need. The Eagles have spent a lot of money too in free agency. They're kind of in their rookie quarterback contract era of needing to do stuff like that to capitalize on what you're able to do there from a low salaried player like Hurts. So I think that it's interesting, but ultimately I do believe the Bills still sign. They always have a veteran cornerback, whether it's Kevin Johnson, whether it was Josh Norman. I do believe that they always have a veteran cornerback.
How
You
many
could
times the Danes?
Yep. Yep. I think you could look at Dane Jackson, but by veteran, I think they mean like someone that's been through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 training camps and different seasons. And I still think someone that sticks out to me, Mike, is Joe Hayden. I think that he's somebody that could come in, compete for a job. If Trey White needs a few days, few weeks to rehab at some point this preseason, you don't miss a beat, and you have a really great vet who, hasn't played well at times now, but now that you have Elam, you have White, you have Taron Johnson, you have Dane Jackson, it isn't a pressing need if he comes and struggles. You could cut him, or B, you could just have him as veteran depth. Or if he does come in and look as good as ever, it's not pressing for Trey White to push it. And maybe you could split reps and ease him back in, right? Wouldn't you say that'd be a decent philosophy?
Yeah, I wouldn't be against it for those exact reasons. You don't really have much to lose if you get him on a cheap 1-year deal. I think Dane Jackson could be the 3-man. He played decently in spurts last season, and the Bills have been reportedly high on Dane Jackson for the last year and a half. So I wouldn't be upset if you do have a 1, 2, 3 of Trey White, Kaiir Elam, Dane Jackson, then you have Taron Johnson doing his thing. So I'm pretty confident in the secondary right now, especially you got one of the best safety tandems in the NFL behind them. So there really aren't many that holes on this defense or offense. And it's funny, if anyone has heard us speak the last couple months here on the Going Deep pod, you think that the Bills have a Super Bowl roster, and accordingly to Vegas and the odds, they agree. And when you have a roster that's one of the best in football, it's hard to pick at holes. Yeah, there's some spots that the Bills aren't elite at that they could theoretically get better, but this is a team that's pretty good at almost every spot on the field. And even the weaknesses, they brought in guys to upgrade. So we'll see if they bring in a guy like Joe Hayden. Don't think it's a necessity, but if there was one spot where they can maybe attack it before training camp, that cornerback 2/3, whatever, give some competition, like I said, for Elam, or some depth insurance would be one of the places I could see them potentially hitting.
Yeah, and I really I listen to Bernard, and I think that he's growing on me a lot. I think that he's going to be able to be that third linebacker too. That I guess in our shows and others, like, we really downplayed the lack of linebacker depth. It was pretty poor behind the starters. It really had some special teamers, definitely, but nothing like even close to being able to be a spot starter in there. And in terms of need and how important the two linebacker positions are. So we all talked about corner, and rightfully so, but like literally maybe one of the worst places of depth pre the draft was linebacker. Brandon Beane feels a lot better with the depth now with Bernard on the roster as mainly the main, kind of the AJ Klein, ability to do different things, be on the roster, to learn from Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds.
Yeah,
and be a viable option.
Yeah, I think it's clear we underestimated the depth that linebacker, because really behind Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, there wasn't really anybody that you felt super confident about going into the late part of the offseason once you got rid of AJ Klein. So drafting someone like Terrell Bernard in the 3rd round, even though some people think it might be a little bit of a reach, that's a guy I expect day one to have a purpose, have a role on this team, at least for some matchups and specific things that'll fit the Bills' defensive scheme. I'm not expecting him to be some starter that's going to be a star from day one, but I definitely think he's going to get some significant snaps this year, as long as he looks the part in training camp, because you don't waste a 3rd round pick on someone that you don't intend to have a meaningful impact going forward.
And he really was so productive in college. Like it's just the undersized that got him. And he points to even Matt Milano for that. And to me, it's like Matt Milano well played over his draft capital and where he was picked. And you think with it being a copycat league, that wouldn't have been such a ding to him. But to me, I think Terrell Bernard has he had interesting measurables. I mean, he had a good testing. He just I don't know how much I'm willing to ding height, right? Like to me, like if he just had a little bit higher of a RAS and some of that profile, he would have been like a 10 RAS.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's football, though. I mean you can
yeah,
be a great college player. You can have some great
he
athletic traits, but
he
sometimes your
did.
height and your weight aren't there, and that can drop you a couple rounds. And for some players, you got a untimely injury or just something in your profile that doesn't stand out properly, and you can lose out on the chance of even having an NFL career. So obviously, the Bills like him enough, in spite of him being undersized, to take a chance on him and see where he fits in. I'm not going to guarantee he's going to be a big time playmaker like I said earlier, but you look at that RAS 40-yard dash. That's a strong time for a linebacker under 4.6. Strong 20 split, 10 split. Just the height and the weight. Just he's a small guy. That's a small linebacker, but depending on what the Bills want him to do, it might not end up being a huge deal that he's undersized.
And we released a really great special Eric Turner did on in the film room of Terrell Bernard. Get out there, check that out. Obviously, we appreciate everybody tuning in today at our new edition Wednesday at 9. Cover One Buffalo, I believe, will be taking our spot at Friday, either 8 or 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock is our time slot every week. So we'll be back at you in about 9 days exactly to come back at you with our normal time slot. But Terrell Bernard, go out there and check the film room Buffalo session on him and here in Cover One was really great and eye opening. I think it'll bring a lot of great things to kind of bring this together. But if you really look at Bernard, like the 35-5 vert, the 10-3 on the broad jump, great explosion, great speed, great agility. He's a player that could come in and immediately be an impact player. And, we're sitting here looking at draft boards and yes, he was like in the 120s, the 110s, the 130s. And I even got myself, into that a little bit of saying like, well, did we reach? Did we do this? Did we do that? The Bills do seem to do well in the third round. Actually, if there's a round the Bills struggling, we've got into this a little bit. It's the second round. They've struggled, since in this tenure from Zay Jones to Cody Ford. We'll see where AJ Epinesa goes. Boogie Basham looks like he's, going to develop. So could we develop one of Boogie or AJ? But really that's 3 or 4 misses within the second round. Let's say Boogie or AJ turns into a player of starting caliber, so they do struggle in that second round. And obviously this year, like they didn't have the conviction to me, Mike, when they traded up 2 spots to get Elam, but then they traded back out of 6th, traded back out of 6th. So they were willing to risk the player there either because they didn't think anyone else would get him or they had a 3rd round grade on him. There's no other reason to gamble those 6th round picks when you've shown just a night before you're willing to gamble a 4th round pick in order to just move up 2 spots so that somebody doesn't trade up. So I think that, that conviction there, like with the second round evaluations, are really, if anywhere, where they struggle a little bit. But to me, they were convicted on Bernard. He was the guy that they wanted to roster in the 3rd round. I think that, ultimately we might have had a reach grade on him, but I think we get caught up in that minutia there. But he might end up becoming one of the better players in this class out of this Bills draft class. And I've still said it a couple of times, watch out for Braylon Spector, another guy who's been able to be able to get it done at a college level and just fell for some of the similar reasons Bernard did. So I think that there's definitely 9.3 RAS score out of Spector to really help shore up that special teams depth. And look at the same height weight kind of combination there that struggles kind of the same 6 foot range, kind of on the lighter side, but really same, pretty much same 40 and 20 and 10. So Mike, a very similar type of players they were after to kind of find somebody to shore up this depth. And the linebacker room looks a lot better regardless of whatever these reaches are. And I said right off the bat, I think Spector makes the roster and could be active on game day.
We'll see. I mean, that's a great athletic profile for a linebacker. Interesting again, that he was undersized. That's 2 undersized linebackers with tremendous profiles. So is it the size that dropped both of them to where they were? Could they have been better prospects? Who really knows? But typically, you when you see two guys with those type of RAS scores, with the only thing standing out in the negative is height and weight. That probably played a big role in where they both went. When it comes to this draft, I think it's clear that the Bills really had 2 players they were prioritizing the entire time, and the rest they were okay with. However, the draft went. It was all about getting Kaiir Elam in the first round, or I guess if McDuffie would have fell to them, maybe we would have seen if McDuffie would have been a possibility at that point in time. And then the second round, it was about getting their pass catching back. Ultimately, ended up being James Cook. Was Breece Hall a possibility if he would have fallen to the Bills? I bet you the Bills would have taken him Breece Hall if he fell to 57. Obviously, didn't come close. So the Bills got what I would consider a pretty good backup option with James Cook. Third round on, I believe they just let the board play out how it did. If they didn't end up getting Terrell Bernard, I think it would have been the end of the world to them in the third round? Probably not. And maybe if they had the 4th round pick, maybe they would have waited to take him at that point in time. Khalil Shakir was just a value steal. A guy that you're in the 5th round, he's dropping to you. You trade up because you can't believe he's still on the board. And then the rest of the picks, you solidify special teams. You might have some projects in there. Christian Benford, that's a guy that another decent RAS possibility who maybe you have the ability to turn into something. But from the draft side of the offseason, I looked at it as you got two solid guys that you believe can be special one day in the organization. You have a value guy that you think has high upside, and he was just too good to pass in the 5th round. Bernard, we'll see how he develops. And then you got a punter that just kicks the ball an infinite amount of yards that is probably an upgrade already on who you have at punter, assuming that you don't worry about inside the 20 every single time you're punting. But overall, from a draft perspective, the Bills filled some holes, but they didn't really have a ton of holes. So they did what they needed to, and they were productive. And that was just a continuation of a free agency, which we'll address. It wasn't about massive holes. It was about how they plugged the holes that they thought they had. And they did a good job attacking the entire roster this spring.
Yeah, and just an athletic profile that we touched on for Ariza too. We'll see if he brings a special teams dynamic of fakes and other athletic profiles, because quite frankly, it's great. I mean, he runs a 4.68, can do things that you're looking for out of that. I think they did really well in day 3. I really do. I think day 2, if anything, was the one that, we were working the draft board. We weren't sure what they wanted to do. We were worried about reaches. Day 3, I thought they did super well in, and obviously they came away with their starting corner in the 1st round. So it's really, this draft can be graded based on how they do in terms of the day 2. In my opinion, what does Bernard turn into? What does James Cook turn into? I think that's all to be determined. And let's see what kind of value they got from some of these guys here later on in the draft. I mean, I personally think they could have drafted a punter of the future in terms of a 10-year punter. I think that they have potential to have drafted their next slot receiver, for many, many years on a 4-year rookie deal. So there's definitely some good to come out. And then what is Benford, aforementioned? Like, what is Benford going to be able to do here? I think he has a good RAS and a good production. But I think that's a really good question. Like, what do the Bills do if McKissic does sign? If he would have signed and honored his signature? I think first and foremost, my opinion on that, they used that money to sign OJ Howard. That's my personal opinion. That's the next day, obviously, the news broke of Vaughn and OJ Howard. I personally think they shifted it over to shore up tight end, knowing that there might be some running backs in the draft that they liked. I personally think they target tight end, a Greg Dulcich. I think that that's the route they would have gone in, Mike, knowing now that you don't have OJ Howard on the roster, but you have McKissic.
Maybe it's Trey McBride out of Colorado.
Yeah, maybe Trey McBride.
Get him. I think if McKissic had remained signed with the Bills, you're probably looking at a linebacker or tight end in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
Is my opinion. because at that point there was already the wide receiver run. Maybe they end up being more aggressive and try to trade up for a guy like Sky Moore or someone else, which we saw it wasn't really unattainable with the way that he was dropping to the 50s. So maybe the Bills would have gotten rid of their 5th-round pick to get up to the early 50s to draft a guy like Sky Moore. So, but that probably would have been the way. Tight end, linebacker, trade up a little bit to get a different wide.
Yeah, I mean, look,
but I don't think you can be upset with how it played out for the Bills. Sure, they wanted McKissick, but you got a running back now on a rookie contract that you think is going to be pretty productive. You ended up getting a developmental linebacker prospect. You got a very good value wideout in the 5th round. So the way it fell, I think Bills fans should be happy, and I think the organization is happy. It's a different lens watching this team now, where you're not looking at a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick and hoping for them to be something more than what they're probably going to be because the team needs them to be great. The Bills are in a good situation where they don't need to rush these guys, and if it takes a year or two, they can afford to wait a year or two. I know it sucks watching a guy like AJ Epinesa and Boogie Basham and some of these different prospects that they've drafted in the past couple of years taking time to develop and not knowing if they ever will fully develop. But if you are a complete team like Buffalo is, you have the luxury of not rushing guys and waiting out their development as a process. So
we had some questions about Trey White. To me, like, I think Benford is someone that you put on the roster to kind of give you some of that cornerback depth. They like the interceptions. They like some of that athletic profile that we've already talked about. There's some stuff there about Benford to really dissect and get into. But I personally think that maybe or maybe not this would be true, but if you saw a veteran cornerback sign like a Joe Hayden, I do believe that could mean that they're looking at Trey White as a little bit longer of an absence than just training camp. I do think that would trickle and trickle and trickle. Thus, Joe Hayden coming here and basically getting a job day one. And when Trey's ready, that's a good problem to have. Now you got Trey, Elam, Joe Hayden, Taron Johnson in the slot. So you do have some things to really put together, and then great depth if one of those players do go down at any time in the season, Mike.
I will say this is purely speculation by me, so don't take any of this as facts. I believe Trey White's going to be out there game one of the regular season.
I think so too.
In Buffalo. I know what people have thrown on Twitter. I know that ACL injuries in the past have been a long-term recovery, but the sports medicine is just so advanced now compared to what it used to be. You see guys like Joe Burrow, who tore his ACL, I believe, in October of his rookie year, and he was back in the preseason practicing last year with the Bengals. So it's not – if Burrow was back and he had a mid-October injury, I believe, and he was back by the preseason, I don't think it's out of the question for Trey White to be back some point middle of the preseason and then be ready for game one. I know on average they say it's about, I think, 10 and a half to 11 months, which is why a lot of people were saying late September, October. I like the one comment, I'm not a doctor, but I played one at a Holiday Inn or on a TV show. That's funny. But I just think what you're seeing lately with these ACL recoveries is a lot quicker timetable than what we've seen in the past. In the Bills, the fact that they haven't brought in a veteran to solidify that depth kind of tells me they think he's on the right progression at this point in time. Now, we'll know more in training camp how they feel about it. There have been some people leaking out things lately that it sounds like it's been a good recovery to this point. He was at the celebrity softball game on Sunday. He didn't play, but they introduced him to the Buffalo crowd. So that was nice to cheer him on. But ultimately, like I said, I believe we'll see him for the first game of the regular season, but still a long time to go before we'll know either way.
I agree. Like I'm in the camp of believing that you'll see him If not week 1, very shortly. I don't believe it's a PUP. I don't believe it's a 6-weeker. I do believe that the only reason you wouldn't is because you had a guy like Joe Hayden come in and look good. And you don't need to press every ounce of it. And maybe he still even dresses week 1. But yeah, like to me, I think that you see what you have in terms of where he's at. And I think they have I really do think this, Mike, somebody on call that they could say, hey, Joe, hey, hey, whomever, you want to come in and be a starting cornerback for the Buffalo Bills and then provide depth once Trey White's back. I do think that that's there and a really good option.
You got to believe it. You got to believe that's the case, right?
Yeah.
I just think some of what's happened, and there was just some things on social media that I just believe were based on speculation that set the fan base to a point where it made it unlikely he would be back for the start of the regular season, and maybe they'll end up being right. But what I've learned is a lot of times you got to be wary of what you see posted on social media, and you got to be wary of what coaches and general managers and different people are saying to the media during press conferences. Some of you guys know, some of you guys don't know. I used to be a sports anchor, lot smaller markets than Buffalo, but Fort Wayne and then Central Ohio. I covered Ohio State. I covered some nice size athletics. Coaches don't tell the media what the truth is. They're not telling the media how they actually feel. They're trying to be as vanilla as possible. I remember one year when EJ Manuel was a rookie in Buffalo, he hurt himself leading up to the regular season, and Doug Marrone was quoted saying, this is not word for word, but to paraphrase, if the season were to start today, EJ Manuel would not start the season opener. And it was reported across all these outlets, EJ Manuel to miss season opener. Well, you know what? EJ Manuel didn't miss the season opener. He played in the season opener. What did Doug Marrone say? If the season started today, and sometimes we just get too excited in putting headlines out in trying to project our own personal feelings in these stories. And there's been nothing from the Bills yet that has said he is going to miss time. So until the Bills officially come out and put him on some list or sign some veteran that late in training camp or right before training camp, there hasn't been any reason to think he will miss time at this point. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I think that I personally in that believe that everything's been positive, and I am fully in the camp of playing him when he's ready. I don't think you need to wait 8 weeks into the season, but I do think that the ease rotation is possible. I do believe that you could see an Elam White split. You could see White coming in for certain down distances and certain plays, different scheme calls, different settings, or just activating him on a game day roster emergency situation. If Elam goes down, if Dane Jackson goes down, whatever, I do think that you'll see some of that. But the Bills start off strong. I mean, they start off with a pretty tough part of the schedule. Could something like missing the first game of the year and then getting the extra 10, 11 days to rest till the Monday night? I think that that's probable too. I think that you might a week 2 to me, like with the extra day on a Monday, he gets to rest. I think that's possible. That's a really realistic target. That's why I think he misses 1 week. And that's my personal right now on May 18th prediction is that Trey White misses the first week of the season.
And if he has to miss a week or two, not the end of the world. This team is strong enough to cover a hole for a week or two. They were good enough to win the Super Bowl last year without Trey White. Just so not to bring up the 13 seconds, they played a team that had the ability to expose the Bills' weakness at corner, and Kansas City did. But the Bills get past Kansas City in the playoffs, they could have won it without Trey White. So you definitely make sure he's 100%. If he's not, take the time. LA, week 1, that's going to be a tough matchup if you don't have Trey, but it's still a winnable game with who the Bills have behind him. So as much as I do believe he could, and I think will be back for the season opener, if he's not ready, take the time. So
Yeah.
he is 100%. You don't want to risk another injury if he's not all the way there. But we'll have a lot of signs before then. I think by the time we get to late July, early August, we're going to have a good feel for where he's at and if he'll be ready in time for the opener. If he's not seeing the practice field by mid-August, well, then it's probably not likely. If you start to see him on the sidelines, on the bike, doing other things, well,
Right.
then you're probably gonna see him try to test it out and see if he can make it in time for the start.
Yeah, for sure. And I personally think they believe that they'll bring in a veteran cornerback too. So we'll see. Then you can have all types of rotations. You don't have to rush anything. You can ease Elam into it. You can ease Trey White back. You have some depth. I think it makes too much sense whenever the cornerback is ready to sign, probably for a low end deal, or someone's released, or I think there'll be a move at that active cornerback position here for the Bills at some point. Just like the Bills, in my opinion, short up linebacker, so I don't see anything going down there. I think they're fairly set at safety, at least for this season. So I do believe the defense and the D-line stacked. So I think that the defense is fairly set. I don't think they're looking for too much entering into the season. I don't think it's one of those years where they're overly looking to improve something. I don't believe that they have a roster spot. They have a battle even at punter. So I don't even think that they have necessarily very many roster spots at all. But did want to take a minute to smash the like button. It means so much to us that you follow along with us here on a Wednesday on a changed time slot for us. So that means a whole lot. We do, a couple of undrafted free agents made it through training camp, Mike, or rookie camp.
Including a former UB Bull.
I know it's your favorite topic is not only UDFAs, but rookie camp pre-UDFAs have got to be really your topic of conversation in terms of, one of the guys we were talking about here, the defensive tackle, ended up being signing through rookie camp to make the roster. And then obviously you had a couple of other names also, still trickling in a little bit. The Bills are at 89 roster spots right now with one available spot. So I'm still thinking it's veteran cornerback, but they can move a UDFA off their roster if they have 90 at the time that they sign somebody. So Jamarcus Ingram from UB, a Power 5 player that came into play under Coach Mo Linguist here at UB last year. So we'll see, he impressed following the mold of Cam Lewis. So we'll see what he's able to do here in a Bills uniform. So shout out to him. So you had Trevon Fuller, come through from the UDFA area. Daniel Joseph, a guy that just signed, I believe, today. So there's a couple of names there, and then a couple of offensive linemen, and Tanner Owen, Will Ulmer. So there were definitely some names to make it through. So it's always interesting to me. I think that that's the ultimate battle that so UDF, it's always funny to me why they all don't have to train, like outside of maybe high end UDFAs, like in our case, Weidermeyer, I guess was a higher end UDFA, maybe Blackshear. But other than that, isn't it a little weird now that all of these players don't? But I believe then you would start having limited people come to your camp, right? You would have lesser talent if you don't automatically sign them, right? In a philosophy, you don't need to focus on the exact player, but the philosophy there is you wouldn't sign, if you didn't sign anybody, you would have a worse pool of players, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Kev. It's with the UDFA, it's kind of like just throwing darts on a dartboard. Players are looking for their one opportunity, and with how it works out, they're just trying to find the team that they have the best chance of squeaking onto a roster. So maybe different philosophies can make a difference if you give them a guaranteed spot. Yeah. Maybe you give them some guaranteed cash and stuff like that. I really don't know what the Bills are thinking when it comes to that process and what the UDFA players are thinking, because it's such a low opportunity. I think for most players, if they're coming to Buffalo, they're hoping for that outside chance that they can either squeak on the roster or more likely scenario where they make the practice squad and they have an opportunity to develop over a couple of years and then hopefully jump ship on either the Bills or another team.
Yeah, philosophically talking about the practice squad though, good point that the practice squad is a really good way to make a good roster. to me, why not join a stable organization that wins, that if you do get playing time and you do earn it from the practice squad, you are known that they keep your players around. Other guys get second contracts. They developed Levi Wallace. They've done a little bit of everything. So to me, it's like, yes, the rosters. So there's certain positions that don't make a ton of sense that, I can't imagine a free UDFA receiver has any interest in coming here. I'm actually shocked at Blackshear's profile that he would choose Buffalo, but I do believe he thinks that there's a legitimate chance to beat out Duke Johnson and Zach Moss. I mean, good for him. Like he thinks that that's possibility, and based on his agent's description. But, really the receiver position, I can't imagine, you'd want to play here. But the benefit there is if injuries happen and you have a good camp, you're now on the best offense in the league. Like, so there is, yes, the roster is hard to make, but you could walk yourself into the best quarterback, the best offense in the league, and all of a sudden, I don't know, it's looking pretty good for your career because you took a back seat and you didn't just take the Houston Texans to try to make the day one roster, but then get put on the practice squad, then get cut, then get re-signed. Maybe the stability of the practice squad, injuries into a dynamic offense. That's kind of my UDFA philosophy as these camps develop, as your OTAs go on. Like, yes, there might be an easier path to the roster, but no team's perfect. And the Bills definitely have some defensive back depth that they could use, offensive line depth. So some of these guys, you saw Alec Anderson come in, some of those names of players that could make the roster. To me, I think it's impossible to make the roster at defensive line. I really do. I think the veteran presence there is super strong. But then, guys like Kingsley Jonathan, Prince Emili, CJ Brewer, Daniel Joseph, the guys that just came in, another great position to be in one of the best defenses in the league, that if someone gets hurt, you can come in and start right away. So to me, like on a good defense, like I think that and the Bills will show the propensity to elevate players from the practice squad and start them and play them. So I think that there's definitely that. And Cam Lewis is a good example of someone that sat his time. And the next thing you know, he beat out Taron Johnson at one point last year. Let's not forget that, that they just Taron wasn't doing something right at the time, and Cam Lewis got the start. So the Bills will show the ability to play some of these guys. So they love their UDFAs, they love their growth, they love their scouting. So Mike, all that kind of summed up, I think there's opportunity on this roster, even on a good roster, that practice squad pay, show that what you can do and be elevated at the right time could be just on a good team, could be just as valuable as maybe the instant gratification of making the Lions.
I mean, entirely possible. You never know. Definitely, you get put in the right situation. You have time to develop. You show something in camp. This organization is a team that is proven with their coaching staff that they'll give you an opportunity if there's a opportunity to be had. So, yeah, I get the points for why, if you're a UDFA, why would you come to Buffalo? That's a very strong point. I just don't think most college players are thinking about the long term in that situation.
Okay,
I think most college players are thinking about one of two things: where can I crack a roster, or where can I get some guaranteed money? And I maybe I'm short sighted, maybe I'm incorrect, but having dealt with multiple MAC schools, I know what players at UB, I know what players at Ohio University and other similar type situations that get opportunities to play in these rookie mini camps and these training camps as a UDFA. And to me, it's always been the same answer. All these guys have always told me it's about trying to get their opportunity to squeak on a team. Now, I definitely think there are some that do look at it as, let's just try to get to the practice squad, because they know it's not realistic that they'll make a roster. But those are the three things: get some money, maybe I can crack the roster, or I will definitely make the practice squad on this team. And you got to believe that some of these organizations are telling these UDFAs, well, right now we don't have any spots for you on our regular roster, but we're high on you. We want you to be on our practice squad. We'll most likely find a spot for you there after cut down day in August. So that's definitely a potential selling point if you're Brandon Beane or any other higher up trying to recruit these UDFAs to come to Buffalo.
Fair enough, Mike. Appreciate your perspective as well on it. To me, I think that someone like Watermeyer proved that. I do think that he's going to have a hard time, obviously getting snaps away from OJ Howard, Dawson Knox, but he was at one point one of the top tight ends in the draft. I know he had one of the worst combines ever, literally ever. But he's going to have a hard time beating out another, MAC player in Quentin Morris and Tommy Sweeney, let alone get any type of playing time from the starter. So I do think that his agent, at least, I'm only pointing to him because I think in ranking, he's toward the top of the free agent list, him and maybe one of the offensive linemen who had a good review as well. But he signed here with really no real path to the roster. There's really no path for him to the roster. So I'm interested to see how his story plays out. He must have gotten a decent bonus to choose Buffalo as well as the opportunity in the future. So I'm interested to see if he can beat Quentin Morris, what he can do against Tommy Sweeney, and then to see if he can crack toward the final roster spots, because he still is probably, with his pass catching ability, probably one of the more intriguing to me. Him and Blackshear.
I mean, he was productive. Lineman. He was productive in the SEC.
Super productive.
If you're productive in the SEC, I don't care about your RAS. You have an opportunity to potentially be productive.
He's just got to beat out Tommy Sweeney.
At least someone that can play in a game or two when needed. I'm not saying he will, but you're no slouch if you're producing in the SEC. And just one other thing, I know this is going to sound shallow on my behalf. It's just so hard with these UDFAs because you're talking about so many players coming to an organization, and they only have so many snaps to go around, so much time to really work with these players. Even if you were a solid player that showed something during your opportunity during practice, you're still going to get cut more than likely. And what you're really hoping for is that maybe a coach that ends up going to another organization puts in a good word for you when they jump ship, or that another team had some good tape on you in the past and heard some good things. I'm not one of those guys that I'm going to go through each of the UDFAs and be like, this guy could be a diamond in the rough, because hell, you could go through 5th round, 6th round, 7th round guys. And what's the odds that they're even going to be a productive player? For every Matt Milano, for every Dane Jackson, Stevie Johnson, Kyle Williams, there's a lot of players that just never worked out, that we forget their names. And it's nice to say, well, I hit on this guy. He was a 7th round picker. This was a UDFA that I was high on that ended up producing. But like I said, when you throw enough rocks, you're eventually going to hit your target. And I think sometimes it's more luck with hitting on a UDFA than it really is anything that you did your job. And I know they have scouting staffs that look at all levels, and they have people that reach out to them, but it's not, if they all knew what they were talking about, you'd have more hits on UDFAs. And it's just not the case. And teams aren't going to take the risk. They're going to stick with the guys that they invested in, because if you have UDFAs that are succeeding on your roster, that means you're probably not doing too well with free agency in the early rounds in the draft. And no general manager wants that to come back to bite them in the butt. So it's one of those, even if you were doing a good job with the UDFAs, the chances are you would never even give them an opportunity anyway, because you're not trying to hurt yourself in the process.
You heard that, Derek Kerstetter. Mike does not believe in you as a UDFA. He was ranked in the 6th or 7th round. So him and Watermeyer were two of the names.
I'm not saying it can't work out. I know. The odds, it's fun to talk about.
Him and Watermeyer were similarly ranked as draftable players, and those are really the two only ranked draftable players that the Bills had. So I'm interested to see. They've made a lot of baits. They did go and trade for a Mike. This team has traded for a UDFA. So
that's a different side, though. If you're giving up
a veteran, though, a guy that they thought could be a veteran in their locker room, they traded.
If you give up like capital for a UDFA, okay, then it's no longer a UDFA in your book. You invested in that player. So it was a UDFA, but then you traded for that. That's a different story. And it's not like the Bills haven't had a good UDFA in the past. I mean, Jason Peters is going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. So once in a while, you strike gold.
I mean, you got Fred Jackson in the Wall of Fame, probably. I mean, you have You have some players there that have been pretty good. I mean, even Levi Wallace, and he wasn't my favorite player, but was a cornerback 2 on a playoff team.
That's the more surprising one. Like the fact that you could get a UDFA and make him your number 2 corner and
for 5
actually
years.
have him be a decent player. But then again, he played at Alabama. So there's different levels to this.
Yeah, but Weidemeyer, we just talked about the SEC.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Weidemeyer might actually be one guy that like maybe could have a long-term potential.
And like, Kerstetter at Texas.
Like what I'm talking about is when you're taking out a guy from like Western Montana A&M, like who like has
I agree with that.
6'4", runs a 4.6 40, and he's a linebacker, and you're like, oh my goodness, like this guy, how did he not play at USC? And then like you watch him like in practice for like a couple weeks, and you're like, oh, because he has no instinct. Oh, because he has no clue like where to be like on the field at any given time. Like, yeah, like there's a reason why they're UDFAs. I'm not saying that there's not diamonds in the rough. I'm not saying that there's not guys that get overlooked. Of course there's guys that get overlooked. But you have high school football, college football, you got D1, D2, D3, like chances are like if you had 120, and I know everybody's going to be like, what about Josh Allen when I say this, but like if you get overlooked by 130 or whatever the number is Division I college football teams, like there's probably
he did get overlooked
NFL ability. Like even Josh Allen eventually did get his opportunity. Right. And when he went to Wyoming, which is Mountain West, which everybody acts like, oh my God, he went to a
Boise State, Kaiir.
Mountain West is solid football. That is no joke. And I think I was one of the people that was saying, why are we talking down about the Mountain West? But Josh Allen showed he could take a team that had been historically bad for like a decade and a half, and he took them to bowl games in back-to-back years. So even then, it was a little bit ridiculous, the hate that Josh Allen faced coming out of college. And he was still drafted 7th overall. So that kind of puts some context for all of it.
Yeah, and I mean, outside of he was kind of overlooked in JUCO. He wasn't overlooked any longer. I mean, look at his RAS profile, look at his combine, look at his went top 10. He was, first overall at one point in the draft process throughout the time before Baker Mayfield's surge. So like he was, but like to your point though, the point you're trying to make is he didn't go overlooked any longer. So
yeah, like by the time the draft came, he was no longer overlooked.
He didn't have the worst combine in NFL history.
Yeah, people thought he could be the number 1 overall pick. Like that's how high he ascended. In the 2 spots I feel like people are most overlooked is high school and then when you're at that JUCO range. And the reason why you're overlooked in high school is Josh Allen, it's actually a story that happens quite often. You grow up in a small community. You're not going up against high-level competition. A lot of recruiting for colleges is based off of good-sized schools playing other good-sized schools and seeing what you do against them. When you grow up in Fireball, when you grow up in like Cattaraugus County or the middle of nowhere, you're not really playing high-level competition. Yeah, there's diamonds in the rough that get overlooked there. But normally they dominate to a point where they at least go D2 or they play NAIA or JUCO. And then you have to hope that your tape at that level gets you that D1 look. So that's where Josh Allen's ride is different, because even though he was overlooked out of high school, he still had the opportunity to put something on tape that had multiple colleges D1 still give him an opportunity. Eastern Michigan, Wyoming, you can laugh at them, but they're D1 schools. And there's a lot of other players that don't even get that opportunity coming out of these small little towns in the middle of nowhere. So, like I said, applaud the hell out of Josh Allen to get where he got. And yes, he wanted to play at Fresno State, which is another good Mountain West school, but he did everything he could. And like I said, I applaud him for getting where he did. But there are other players out there that never get that opportunity to even do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mike, what an action-packed show. Like I was glad we were able to bring some spring nuggets to the table, talk about a few things. And yeah, Josh's attitude's the reason that he's the best quarterback, not only in this draft class that he was in, but in the NFL. Like his intangibles, we couldn't evaluate. We couldn't evaluate his work ethic. what he's willing to work on every single year, his deep passes, his intermediate throws, whatever thing his screen game or his short game this year. So whatever it is that he determines he needs to work on, he comes back and it's better. Like, and not even game to game. You're talking about he goes away, you come back, and all of a sudden the Bills are really good at whatever it is he focused on. So I do believe that like someone like Josh Allen just has a relentless ability to get better.
And I just want to say a couple more things about him coming up. Josh Allen, what was great about him is I like some of these comments here about bodies still growing after high school, never giving up, and him having the physical tools. He had such a perfect combination, and it just, when it came together, even when people were laughing at him coming out of Wyoming, it was just a great combination. You're talking about a person who grew into his body, who was athletic, got a strong arm, rocket arm, had the right mindset, humble, a leader of men, and was just willing to do whatever it took to get his opportunity, sending his tape to all those D1 schools, having the right attitude, being football smart. So, yeah, Josh Allen is, when you think about the odds of that ever happening, I can't even put numbers to it. 99% of players, though, will never have that combination of just being able to keep fighting for what they want and what they believe they're capable of doing. So it's like people who want to compare rookie quarterback stats to Josh Allen. It's nice to say, but most players are never going to compare favorably when it comes to doing all that stuff and getting noticed and making a name for themselves.
Must be my burner, KM. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what more can you say than go Bills, and what Josh Allen is able to show as a leader, as well as the rest of his team, to bring the community together to heal. And ultimately, like, he is a fantastic figure intangibly around the league, Mike. So I think that people look up to him. He's in the golf thing, right? Isn't he in the golf thing?
Yeah, so he's going to be in the match with Patrick Mahomes going up against Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. He's also going to be a guest commentator on the ESPN for the PGA Championship coming up this week, one of the days. He's big time now. Josh Allen is now what Jim Kelly was to the nation in the 90s. He is larger than life. In Buffalo, he's a cult god. He's a cult figure right now.
He's like in the F1 thing, right? Doesn't he hang out with?
He was hanging out with
Danny Renault. Danny Ricciardo. Yeah.
So he's larger than life right now, and it's amazing because he's still staying humble at every step in the process. He knows and reads Buffalo perfectly. He knows what this town is like, and he's one of us, and that's the great thing, that he a lot of players don't want that spotlight after something that happened on Saturday. A lot of players don't want the spotlight of feeling like they're obligated to do something, but Josh Allen puts it on his shoulders. He didn't need to lead the team and to be out there today, but he knew that it was needed for the community, and he knew that he has a role that to play there. And not to get back into the events that took place over the weekend, but he gets Buffalo, and I think that's the most special thing. He's still a young man. He's 25. He's matured so much already over his short amount of time in Buffalo. And that's the most encouraging thing, is you have a guy that is making over $250 million over the course of his contract, yet it feels like, in a way, he's one of us. And you don't see relatable human beings like that at this stage in the NFL very often. And Buffalo is blessed to have him right now. And hopefully all goes well. The Bills will eventually win a Super Bowl, and he stays in Buffalo for a long time, and we get to they get to the glory land. But just extremely lucky that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott took that chance and ended up being right about it.
Yeah, and contractually, like you said, he's going to be here a long time. Personally, he will be. I think his play on the field will obviously prove up to the contract, and his just intangibles off the field are just seriously like unmatched and might be better than his on the field play, which is top of the league. To say that his off the field stuff is better, I think is a bold take, Mike. So, but I do believe his off the field presence and what he does for his community and his team and just sports in general. Is that cool to say? Like sports in general, like what he's able to kind of bring to the sport environment, like we already mentioned, F1, golf, and other.
He just knows he just knows like his purpose and how to fit into the setting. Like we talked the other day, like primetime Bills. Like
Yep.
it when he plays on primetime, Josh Allen plays better.
And on the road,
he arrives at that moment. He knows he strives on those big moments, and it's almost like that's what he feeds off of. And even the celebrity softball game, like he won the home run derby, he smacked one and like got the crowd pumped up into it. And off the field stuff, he knows what to say with the media. He's not going to give other teams bulletin board material, but you better believe he knows what he's saying to his own teammates to pump them up. So it's just, I'm so glad he's a Buffalo Bill. And just like, I eventually got to wrap it up. I know I'm going on and on, but it's just, I appreciate that this is a guy that just understands it. He gets it. That's the simplest way I can say. He just gets it. Like, I'm so happy he's the Bills quarterback. Like I said, good.
Yeah, and just address Dave. Thing to your city and your fans and your roster. So that's what they developed with, from Josh Allen to others. Stephon Diggs, we heard all about Stephon Diggs, and he's been an amazing piece to the culture here in Buffalo and the community. So Brandon Beane knew what he was doing. I'm never going to say Brandon Beane got lucky. We can't sit here and say Brandon Beane got lucky with Josh Allen. He got lucky with this. Sean McDermott, was lucky. He was lucky Sean McDermott, picked him, and Pagula was lucky he hired Sean McDermott and this and that, Mike. But I think overall, there's too many things that aren't just lucky. Like, you knew what you were doing. You developed the roster.
Absolutely. Not to cut you off, looks like we might have had some YouTube issues with the stream breaking up. But yeah, it's a copycat league, and it's the greatest compliment when other teams try to copy what you're doing.
Tyreek Hill
used to hear the Patriot way for 2 decades, and you know what? Now teams are copying the Bills. The Bills might not have won their Super Bowl yet, but it's easy to see what Buffalo is doing is the right way to build a team. Culture is not the only way to build the team, but it's nice when you have a culture and you have the talent to go along with it. That's the perfect combination. And you put that together and also have some good salary cap math. Perfect. It's the perfect way.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with all of those points. And just that the Bills kind of put the new portfolio out there of drafting good character players at the highest talent level that they could possibly find. And I do think that mixture is really, really important to build a roster. And they're getting copied now with getting talented players for your quarterback. Don't put it on your quarterback shoulders and say, well, you're either good. If you're good, you'll make them better. Like, just because Tom Brady could. But he's like you said, the Patriot way. He's one of the only players to ever, or very few, be able to do that. Get the talent to the player to help him develop, and then thus give it back to the Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakiras of the world. But Mike, from the Going Deep podcast on a Wednesday special, apologize for some of the breakups there at the end. Just wanted to get in a nice little segment on Josh Allen, a nice segment on what we were able to kind of come away with from the spring practices, and Mike's take on the UDFAs. So from the Going Deep podcast on the Wednesday special, tune in Friday to our regular time slot for Cover One Buffalo with Greg and Aaron, who will be taking that time slot to talk about their normal show. And actually have to answer one more question here. Who signed the ball on mine? That's going to be, I appreciate that question. We'll get into that next week. So tune in to next Friday, and I will show you some of the gems that are signed on that ball right there. They're gems. There's some good names. I have a couple that I want to show you guys that I think you'll all appreciate. some gems. So we're going to get into that next Friday at our normal time slot, Mike, 8:00 here on the Going Deep podcast. So 9 days from today. We appreciate everyone coming here for Wednesday. You're bringing back Fridays, and we're making that a niche show for everybody that wants to talk football on Fridays. Smash the like button. We appreciate everybody from tuning into this. We love you, Buffalo. But from the Going Deep podcast, I'm Kevin. That's Mike. And we'll catch you next week with the signatures on the ball.